Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome guys once again for the trade module for NPTEL which is specifically on strategic trade and protectionism theories and policies. We are now at the 22nd lecture and week 5 where we have been discussing the strategic trade which are defined through terms of trade, how the terms of trade are actually differentiating the extent of trade in the world. Now, in this context, to explain terms of trade correctly, we are supposed to know offer curves, because terms of trade are not just determined without understanding the equilibrium prices after trade. And the equilibrium prices may be determined partially or in a general equilibrium setup. But in a partial equilibrium setups, as I already pointed out 2 weeks lecture back, where the simple relative demand of products and their relative prices determines the particular partial equilibrium setups, whereas in a general equilibrium setups we require offers curve or Edgeworth-Burks diagram, which we have already unfolded. So, in this lecture I am explaining offer curves. Offer curve is very useful to explain the general equilibrium analysis and the terms of trade accordingly. So, this is on offer curves in trade analysis. Myself Dr. Pratap Chandra Mohanty, a faculty member in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Roorkee. So, let us unfold the nitty-gritties inside. This is the flow chart, this is the structure we have already discussed, but since in the last week we have opened up this, why not discussing this again. So, as I told you, there are 2 approaches to discuss. One is called general equilibrium and is called partial equilibrium setup. Now, in the general equilibrium I already pointed out demand and supply and only one market and that determines the price, whereas in the general equilibrium analysis, we should take the help of offer curve, and what is the use of offer curve will be explained. So, we already explained the overview of offer curve and general equilibrium analysis in the previous lecture, but still it is always required to clarify the step by step understanding of offer curve. We have the content for this lecture. The next lecture will have applications of it and with examples for it. So, what is important? Both market at the same time in the general equilibrium setup, and it is a complete analysis and also a simplified approach and determining the equilibrium trade prices, which is going to be accepted by all the countries and participating countries. So, in the introduction, which I already said, the relative price differences between 2 nations in isolation reflect comparative advantage and forms the mutual beneficial trade. So, this can be explained with partial equilibrium and general equilibrium setups, and accordingly the trade takes place. As we have already pointed out, that SMART is the simulation package which includes WITS, which World Intellectual Trade Solution, is a partial equilibrium modeling tool. Whereas GTAP is also another advanced software for international trade modeling, highly useful for general equilibrium analysis. So, then what are the offer curves which we are going to talk about? Offer curves, as I told you, are initially developed by Marshall and Edgeworth, and the famous Edgeworth box diagram is well known to the students of economics, especially in the microeconomics and the advanced microeconomics analysis. We discuss the Edgeworth box diagram by including all the sectors simultaneously, be it exchange market, be it production market, be it supply side or the service sector. So, that actually very important in the discussion of general equilibrium setups. Now, what it means? It means that how much a country is willing to export in order to demand its imports. How much of its import commodity nation demands, because generally we say nations demands are called import demand. And so, how much a country actually demands for its imports for it to be willing to supply various amounts of its export commodity. That is a precise definition of offer curve. So, this can be derived with the help of production possibility frontier, indifference map and various hypothetical relative commodity prices, and that usually takes place after trade, and in the autarky situation we cannot determine all those changes. So, an extent of dynamism is attached with the applications of offer curve. So, basically this is a combination of countries expected or desired exports and imports and different terms of trade. So, we will be discussing terms of trade in detail. So, this is also known as I mentioned in the last class, also known as reciprocal demand curve, initially included in the economic literature, in the trade literature by John Stuart Mill, where reciprocal demand curves are categorically explained. This also measures, as I told you, this also measures willingness to trade, how much the participating countries are actually willing to trade each other in order to have their exports or import respectively. Now, let us explain with the help of a diagram how we actually derive the offer curve. So, the diagram here presented is like this. Let this be the y axis and x axis, that stands for commodity x, this and y, commodity x and y, and this is the production possibility frontier. In front of us PPF for the domestic country before trade, especially we are now explaining the autarky situation, and this let be their trade off between x and y in terms of the prices in the market. This is also called price line. This is also called the Px by Py, the ratio is in terms of Px by Py, it is given here, and now let this be the equilibrium point, and this is before before trade, and this is also called autarky equilibrium, we already discussed. So, it is responsible for a particular equilibrium situation by which country can able to produce certain variety of commodity x and y. Now, if we have a different map of indifference curve, that means if you have a different structure of our consumption basket, we are actually landed up somewhere here. This is our point of equilibrium. So far as the willingness to consume or so far as the consumption point is concerned. So, therefore, this is the production points is somewhere here, where the consumption points are situated at somewhere else. So, that means we are demanding more of y as compared to x. So, what we will do? We will try our best to actually get those y from other countries after trade subject to the relative price differences. Now, as with this consumption point, C stands for point of consumption, P stands for production and accordingly we have the basket of or bundle of commodities, those are consumed respectively for x and y. Now, once there is a trade, we usually expect the relative prices of these things will change, and therefore, the post equilibrium structure will be little different, is not it? So, let us see the the expansion path curve, and here again on the another diagram we are explaining in terms of their rays expansion path, and this starts from the origin is explained here at this corner, and this stands for Px by Py. After trade these points gets changed. So, let us initially they are consuming x 5 and then this is y 5 and due to trade. Now, we are changing the situation due to trade, we are arriving or we arrived into another point of equilibrium and this is the new production point and accordingly we are getting we have different combinations since P x by P y is now relatively lesser. So, we will export it and in return we will get imports from other country. So, now P x by P y since the ratio is higher, no I mean it is the particle, this is now P x by P y 1 is the slope is lesser. So, this is after trade there is higher demand for x because now countries x is demanded elsewhere. So, the country will be motivated country will be highly motivated to export x. So, therefore, they are producing more of this amount and in lieu they have the option to get more of in lieu they have the options to import more of y. So, that their requirement of y was there earlier, now due to trade they get higher income. So, this is higher income in terms of relative prices of x. So, they get higher income. So, those income there are two interpretation, one is either those income gets distributed. So, there are distribution effect to their country. So, therefore, they get but better options and choice, the income increases income increases and second point is they have higher substitutes available. So, the consumption patterns also increases. So, therefore, they arrive into a higher point instead of this point they arrive into higher point due to rise in the relative prices. So, this is the new equilibrium point and this is P x by P y 2. So, they are in their terms of trade also improved due to higher trade. So, we will also explain terms of trade and its differences with various terminologies as suggested by various experts. And if you do not understand terms of trade and its details, the strategies derived by the member countries might be very difficult. So, that is the reason we are exploring all the discussions here. Now, due to higher trade higher relative prices for the common country 1 we are concerned with or country A we are concerned with. So, they are producing more of x and they are also they are getting more of y. So, what is important here? We wanted to emphasize that the due to trade the level of satisfaction increases and then they arrive into a higher indifference map. So, therefore, since terms of trade increases exports and import demand also increases. Now, what is important here? We wanted to derive the offer curve for the country A. Now, what is the offer curve? We say that this is the latest basket of commodities, this is import demanded, this is export supplied. So, demand and supply matches at a point, there are 2 points to be connected. There if we track other other possibilities even before the point there might be other points. So, other points can be connected. So, if you plot all those these are called offer curves, this is called offer curve for country A. So, this is what is explained in this diagram. So, we have this x 6 and x y 6. So, offer curve is plotted accordingly. So, this is the point, this is our new offer curve. This is for country A. Now, what are the interpretations for it? Interpretation is how much country A is demanding the imports in order to be ready with export supply to country B. So, now higher the P x by P y, higher the prices, relative prices, there are higher chances of demanding more of y, because they have relative prices options, relative export supply and they have more income from other countries, and since more opened off the country is, higher demand is also expected. Now, let us interpret again. So, offer curve represents willingness to trade at every possible terms of trade. every possible terms of trade. Therefore, it is not discrete points we are connecting all possible points which describe different extent of offers. Now, as the relative prices of commodity X rises, country A becomes or willing to export more and import also more, because of other options available and our standard of living increases, and consumption basket increases. So, therefore, their independence map reaches at a higher level. So, offer curve is actually bowed towards the import good axis. Why import good axis? We need to again check. Similarly, country B's offer curve will be just the reverse, because the terms of trade which are referring to country A will be reversed for the country B. Now, there will be certain questions on it, if we are giving Px by Py for country X, if it is 1. So, this is just simply for if this is the TOT of country 1. So, TOT of country 2 terms of trade will be just the reverse, Py by Px, because now Py is nothing but Px by Py of country 2. Now, so there will be questions, objective questions as well as some other detailed questions in your evaluation part. So, you may check it very carefully, and then you might be given an options to derive the offer curve. As an objective questions will make you confused with variety of questions from the diagram itself. There might be diagrammatic questions as well, but the options you need to fill it up. Okay. Now, in this particular example in the diagram, what is visible? This is P production point, let these be the consumption point before trade. Now, what really matters here, if just the reverse cases are observed within the country, now what is expected? Country X is demanding more than that of its domestic production. So, if the country A is demanding more, now country A is going to import more of X instead of exporting, which is actually counteracting the views of Hexagonal model. Now, in this situation, look at this, this is going to reverse our terms of trade. Now, initial terms of trade, look at this, initial terms of trade is explained by Px by Py. Now, due to if there will there be trade? Yes, there will be trade, because they are demanding more of X. If they are demanding more of X, then what really happens? The same country is demanding more of X. So, country might be in a position to produce more, or you can see it, if by any reason the slope, look at the new of this one. So, slope declines. Now, since there is no demand, this is the domestic production. Now, the country, because of their own consumption, they are demanding more of X as against Y. So, what really happens? There are two interpretations. One is Px by Py. Even in the international market, demand for Y, if it is a large country context, price of Y will fall because they are not demanding more, whereas price of X will rise. So, that way it will be against the against the country's terms of trade, and so therefore, that will be countervailing their extent of consumption. Whereas, now we are saying, suppose by any reason their terms of trade actually declines, and suppose the country produces more and their terms of trade declines, just the reverse pattern we wanted to see, or inversely wanted to emphasize for country 2. Okay. Initially we said for country 1, here we are defining for country B. Just a minute, I will come back and explain it. Okay. If this is the scenario for country B, if the country B is having the situation like this, now country B is demanding more of X, just the reverse. This is just the reverse. If country B is demanding more of X and less of Y, then country B will be exporting it. Now, when the country B is demanding more of X, so the relative price of X is actually increases, and so therefore, the terms of trade actually terms of trade actually declines. Why? Because of the fact that for country 2 their terms of trade is Py by Px. This is simply Py by Px, since Px increases. So, this as a whole falls. So, this is what is explained here. Now, initially at this level they have certain consumption and their domestic production stands at this point x7. Now, here we are saying this let be represented with this. Now, due to fall in the relative prices, the the axis from the ray from the origin declines, because the P now for country 2 it is Px by Pu, basically Px increases. We are emphasizing the Px by Py falls, for country 2 it falls. So, therefore, the ratio falls and we landed with a new equilibrium point. Now, if all the points are just connected again, it is just the reverse and we will arrive into the offer curve for country B. So, let us come back to the understanding of equilibrium. The international terms of trade, that is Px by Py, will be the slope of the slope of a line passing through the point where the offer curve cross. So, the equilibrium point takes place between the demand and supply condition in both the countries, because it not only counts the internal and external demand, it also counts their domestic demand as well as domestic supply. So, internal we mean not just internal demand and supply, it also accounts the external and external demand and supply both. Now, here we are saying one thing. Now, this is the point where both the offer curve actually intersects. So, it will be responsible for a certain price level where we are expecting equalization of terms of trade, where Px by and Py is generally expected to be equivalent to 1, okay. And this is responsible for a certain level of terms of trade, and there will be no diversion of equilibrium. So, these are terms of trade, and country A will desire to export commodity x1 units, and country B will want to import x1 units. Whatever the country 1 is going to be demanding, that will be demanded by another country, demanding for import, another will be ready to export, and vice versa. So, this is what we are explaining. So, now if these are the terms of trade, country A will desire to import y1 and country B will be happy to export y1. So, therefore, there will be no mismatch and this stands as an equilibrium price. So, therefore, now question arises, is this the equilibrium price? Yes, because of the fact that any terms of trade other than that will create some kind of excess demand for one good or excess supply for another. Now, so therefore, the relative price will adjust until this is equalized or the ratio stands equal for both the countries. Now, look at this point, this equilibrium situation we are expecting here to explain. There are 2 points to note. Now, at this point, now you can easily find out, look at the relative prices for country A and the country B, it is different, okay. So, it is not equal. So, here the country A is willing to export and import differently. Now, at P given the Px by Py at 1, country 1 wishes to actually import y1 units, this is what is written, but country B is ready to, or country B is only interested to export y2 units. Why is it so? You can look at the relative prices. In the offer curve actually clearly points out the differences. Here country 1 is ready to willing to take more, whereas country 2 is not ready to export that much. So, that has led to over demand of price of good Y. So, over demand leads to higher prices. So, higher prices, the Px by Py, here we are saying Px by Py is actually lesser than that of this situation. So, since there is higher demand, So, Px by Py is actually here it is at this point. So, it is higher. So, when the relative prices increases, so I mean when there is over demand, I mean just the reverse, when this is actually higher, we can mention for country B. So, accordingly you can check. Now, from this argument we clearly find to the fact that the prices of Y will rise for sure. So, that will equalize. Now, these points are achieved if and only if, we can easily say, if and only Px by Py increases every time, is not it. But for another country it is just the reverse, Py by Px. So, here we are saying Py by Px, Py prices will rise. Okay. So, Py by Px will rise. So, this will reach at this level. So, there will be new upper curve, and accordingly a single price is actually established, and that will define the equilibrium price level. Similarly, if you count just the reverse point for explanation, if at point I mean a country wishes to export x1, suppose country 1 wishes to export x1, then but country B is only interested in importing x2. Okay. So, there will be mismatch actually. So, there will be excess supply. So, in one case for countries perspective, there were oversupply, now we are saying there is excess supply of good X. So, that will lead to reduction in the prices. So, excess demand for Y causes Py to rise, where excess supply of X causes Px to fall. So, thus Px by Py falls and it reaches another equilibrium point, the trade line gets flatter. Now, in other words, the terms of trade line gets flatter because of the fact that we have received different terms of trade. So, moving the countries in the direction of equilibrium. So, now you can find out this from the disequilibrium situation. We will move towards the equilibrium point. So, such that the terms of trade gets equalized and reaches a better point. So, and accordingly the prices actually gets changes. In the reverse case, the terms of trade will get steeper. In earlier case we said the terms of terms of trade get flatter. Now, we are saying it gets steeper and reach at the equilibrium point. Now, accordingly the equilibrium reaches. So, what are the interpretations? So, in short, the country terms of trade are the prices of the exports divided by the price of imports. So, a rising terms of trade is a good news for the concerned country. So, country A's terms of trade as an example, since country A export X and import Y, and this is useful since we are emphasizing the commodity X to be exported. Now, look at if Py by Px is country B's terms of trade, in this example just the reverse is true. As A's terms of trade improves, terms of trade improves, B's terms of trade must be deteriorating, and vice versa, which I already explained. So, shift of terms of trade so defines like this: anything that causes country A's willingness to trade to change will shift as upper curve. Increase willingness to trade, so I mean so upper curve of A shift towards right. Decrease willingness to trade, upper curve will shift towards left. I mean the upper curve which we have just explained, if it is like this, if it is in willingness to export more, so it will be shifted towards right. Otherwise, I mean for other regions it will be shifted left. So, similarly we can explain for country B as well, and these can be caused by changes in demand and supply conditions as well. So, these are the shift where the upper curve moves towards right, and why they are shift due to other regions. When demand gets changes, there are shift in the terms of trade as well as the upper curves. So, what is the ultimately or eventually reaching at an equilibrium point. Similarly, for country B, increased demand for imports by country B shifts country B's upper curve towards left or upward. So, higher the import demand, so if once they are demanding more, so their upper curve actually shifted towards up, and vice versa. So, they will reach at a point. So, any decrease in a country's willingness to trade will shift the offer curve leftward or downward. So, similarly, other regions we have other patterns we have already discussed. So, ultimately or eventually they reach at an equilibrium point. Now, let us examine a bit, we will talk about all these details in the next class, but let us why there is shift. One of the reasons is actually tariff. So, tariff, imposition of tariff by country A, country A on the imports of the trade volume of trade takes place. Imposing a tariff, country A decreases trade volume decreases trade volume and improves its terms of trade. Why is it so? Because by imposing tariff so the price of that product increases so but B's terms of trade deteriorate. I mean in any case, by imposing a tariff, country usually restrict their imports, import demand falls. So, there when the denominator falls, as a ratio actually trade increases. So, similarly, changes in the supply condition will also shift a country's offer curve around. For example, productivity changes, discovery of new resources actually going to change the offer curve. What we wanted to mention here, just as by the last slide, last couple of slides, we have already said demand patterns, they are domestic production and supply, and accordingly or tariffs or any kind of intervention lead to changes in the offer curve and slope, and the elasticity of the changes also matter a lot in determining the position of their offer curve, whether it is steeper, flatter, the exact shapes can be derived. So, those cases by examples can be unfolded, can be discussed in the next class. I think you may reserve your questions, we will take it forward in the exact classes. So, with this let me stop here. Thank you.